today's gospel, we see Jesus casting out demons and then being challenged by the people where he is, and they try and suggest that he is actually in league with the devil. Christ obviously strongly rebukes them for this. There's something interesting here. Well, there's actually several interesting things about today's gospel reading. The first is that yet again we see this demonic possession and this casting out of demons, this exercising of divine power is a fundamental part of Christ's ministry. It's a hallmark that you see again and again in the Gospels. Now, there's something really interesting, though, about the way that Jesus is carrying out his exorcisms, which is unique and very important. We read about this in Matthew chapter 4, where Jesus carries out an exorcism, and the people are amazed, and they say, "What is this exorcism?" He just utters a word, and the demons flee. Now, why that's interesting is because in the time of Christ, an exorcism was normally a very lengthy and involved process, and the exorcist would turn up and they would intone a very long and lengthy incantation. But Jesus is not an ordinary man. He is very different, and he wields a divine power. Because he is the Son of God, he wields power that no other prophet has wielded, no other teacher has wielded before him. And he is able to cast out demons with a single word. And that's really a very powerful statement about who Christ actually is. He's the Son of God. He talks about this again today when he talks about the strong man defending his house or his castle, but then someone stronger comes along. Well, Jesus is that stronger one in today's gospel. He is the one who comes to bind up Satan and to free us from the house of captivity, his house of sin, which keeps us captive and keeps us down. The last statement in today's gospel from Christ is once again a very, very challenging call. If you're not with me, you're against me. If you're not gathering with me, you are scattering against me. And this is a really, really powerful challenge. And I was thinking about this and I thought to myself, well, what is the one hallmark that we need in our life in order to remain faithful to this call to be one with Christ and to be gathering and not scattering? And I think the one fundamental thing we need again is humility. Humility is, first of all, that recognition that we are not God. Humility is the recognition that Jesus is the Son of God and that we are called to be obedient and to bow down and worship before him. We are not meant to be like Adam and Eve who try and recreate the world in our own image. We are meant to obey and recognize that we are made in the image and made for the worship of God. So we submit ourselves. The other thing about humility is that we don't play fast and loose with doctrine or with the truth. We submit ourselves humbly to those things. We don't try and take the words of Christ and then mangle them up and reshape them in the image of some new popular ideology. With humility, we are willing to live for the truth and commit to the truth and even share the truth, even when that is unpopular and even when that is going to cost us something. And this time of Lent is a time, you think about it, when really there is a great opportunity to focus again quite strongly on this grace and this virtue of humility. It is a time when we strip back a lot of perhaps what you might call the decadence of our lives. We live a more simple, more humble way in order to make space for Christ, to rekindle that relationship, in order to refocus ourselves, in order to actually make space for humility. As we live in a more humble way, it's an opportunity again to reflect on seeking and striving to grow more fully into that grace of living out the virtue of humility. Today's saint quote of the day comes from Saint Vincent de Paul, and he said this: "You must ask God to give you power to fight against the sin of pride, which is your greatest enemy, the root of all that is evil and the failure of all that is good, for God resists the proud." Today's gospel, I think, is a classic example of that pride in action. There are some people who are amazed when they see Jesus casting out this demon, but there are others who react immediately with pride and accuse him of being in league with the devil. And when you think about it, that's a pretty proud thing to say. They didn't inquire and ask what was going on here. They immediately jumped to a conclusion because they could not see the good. There was this resistance because of the pride and a lack of humility. And as I said, to follow Christ and to be close to him and to be a gatherer and not a scatterer requires humility, and pride gets in the way of that. So perhaps today, as we are now officially at the halfway point of Lent, this is a good opportunity again to seek God and ask him to enlighten our hearts and minds for those areas, and there's probably lots of different areas where pride is at work in our life. Because as we hear in today's Saint quote, pride really does get in the way. It's very destructive to the will of God in our life. It is contrary to all that is good. And we need the grace of humility and able to be able to draw closer and closer to Christ.